When you're striving to do something that most people around you can't do, aren't willing to do, you're going to have haters. And you're going to have people that go in opposition of you just because they don't want to see you succeed. And for me, it's been a lot of personal growth. But one of the most important things through all those experiences, don't become jaded. You know, just because you have one or two bad people that go against what you're trying to do with the intentions of helping society as a whole, don't become jaded to the point where you don't trust anybody and think everybody's bad.
Hi, I'm Erik Weir, and welcome to another episode of Stuttering Your Way to Success. I'm here today with a friend of mine, Police Chief Keith Grounsell, who's the police chief in Laurens County. Before that, he was in Simpsonville. But more than that, he's written 4 books. He has an upcoming TV show coming out, right?
Yes,
and,
sir.
And you've done work around the world, including Afghanistan. I'm so excited to have you on today. What got you into police work?
You know, I grew up in a household of public servants. My father was a United States Marine for 22 years, and it was kind of instilled in me at a young age. I knew I didn't want to sit behind a desk or do anything like that. And I joke about that now because I'm a chief now and I do sit behind a desk. But I didn't want the job to be the same thing every single day, monotony, working in a factory or anything like that. And the opportunity came to be a police officer after college, and I took advantage of that in my hometown at the time, Malden, South Carolina, and just hit it out of the park from there. It's been a wonderful career the last 25 years.
Wow. And you have a TV show, Undercover, caught on tape. Tell me about that. What's the concept there?
It's quite interesting. You know, there's not really a lot of shows out there about true deep undercover people. I'd say less than 1% of all law enforcement actually were deep undercover. Okay. There's a misconception out there that plainclothes officers are undercover. Okay. And they're not. They may be doing an undercover surveillance assignment or something like that, but deep undercover where you're full-time undercover is very rare. So I published a series of books called A Narc's Tale. A producer read my books, contacted me. We did a short film or our short filming session, and A&E picked up the series, and I filmed a couple episodes with that, and it's going to showcase undercovers from all across the United States. It actually used real footage. It's not reenactments.
Wow.
And it shows everything, and then it talks to the undercovers after about the mental effects, and maybe even talks to the suspects or the informants that may have been involved or family members. It's a pretty neat concept.
How does being undercover? I mean, what's that like? Is it fulfilling, and how does it impact you as a person?
Yeah, it was very exciting, but the problem was if you've ever done anything really exciting, what do you want to do? You want to talk about it. You want to tell people, but you can't.
Right.
So it's like doing the most exciting thing in your life and having this major adrenaline dump every single day.
Right.
But you can't tell anybody your story. And that's what got me into writing. That was kind of my therapy.
Oh, interesting.
And I wanted to write the stories down to one day be able to tell the story to my children. That was where it started. It wasn't about putting it out there to the masses, but I wanted them to know why I was gone for months at a time, sometimes didn't even come home.
Wow. No, when I was reading about you, one of the things I noticed is that when you became the police chief of Simpsonville, it was the 28th, I think, safest county or city, whatever, in the state, and you moved in 2 years to first. So how do you make so much change?
You know, for me, I think my narcotics background helped me because narcs are proactive. It's not like a property crimes investigator. You get a report from a burglary or a theft and you investigate it after the fact. You don't have to be proactive in that aspect. In law enforcement, as a narcotics investigator, you have to go out there, develop informants, be proactive, run surveillance. I think that ingrained in me a policing concept of being very proactive. I also realized that 95% of all crime is linked to drugs in some way, shape, or form, whether it be domestic violence, utilizing alcohol, or some sort of a theft to support a drug habit, or a burglary for a theft to support drug habits, or an assault for a rival drug dealer or drug deal gone bad. So I realized if you go after drug traffickers hardcore and you partner with mental health people. You partner with people in rehab for true addicts that actually need it. And then you do community policing. You can change the structure, the dynamics of any police department, any city. And we went from number 28 safest city in the state of South Carolina to number 1 in 2 years. And it was a testament to true community policing and going after drug traffickers.
How do border issues, I mean, the U.S. border between Mexico or between Canada and the ease of access or getting across, I mean, what do you see as the impact of that on drugs?
It's a huge impact.
The U.S. in general.
There's basic business principles of supply and demand.
Right.
We have a huge demand for drugs in the United States, and Mexico is a huge supply nation, and not only for the United States, but also for the world.
Right.
And if we allow that border to be open and allow the drugs to come across, they come across at a much more inexpensive cost. They're more readily available to just about anybody. But the problem is, it's not just coming from Mexico, just drugs. It's terrorist networks, narco-terrorists.
Wow.
It's other criminal elements that are coming into the United States, and we really don't know what we have. We don't know what they're planning, what they're plotting, and it's rather scary from a law enforcement perspective, because narcotics are one thing. Killed over 110,000 people last year in the opioid epidemic.
Jeez,
that's almost greater than any war we've been in, the last 50 years or more.
That's remarkable.
And people don't look at that. That's on an annual basis. And where are those drugs coming from? Some of it from China, some of it through the Mexico border predominantly. What are we doing about that? We have to shut down and lock down the border. It's just like your house. You have a lock on your front door, and you have a door for a reason. You have a fence to protect what's inside.
Right.
You don't have it to be evil or mean.
Yeah.
We just have to know who's coming here. We need to have a process by which people can get here legally as well.
Of course.
That's much quicker than it is currently.
Wow. So on our show, Study Success, we basically say there, no one I've had on has had success without a setback.
Absolutely.
Are there any setbacks you can share with us? And if you've had them, I mean, how do they shape you, and what did you learn?
So one thing for me is constant setbacks in leadership, because when you're striving to do something that most people around you can't do, aren't willing to do, you're going to have haters. And you're going to have people that go in opposition of you just because they don't want to see you succeed. And for me, it's been a lot of personal growth. But one of the most important things through all those experiences, don't become jaded. Just because you have one or two bad people that go against what you're trying to do with the intentions of helping society as a whole, don't become jaded to the point where you don't trust anybody and think everybody's bad, because that's not the reality. But for me, I've had many struggles. I remember some of my first early struggles when I was in Afghanistan. I quickly worked my way up, and I had 144 Americans, U.S. Department of State contractors that worked for me, and we had a 5,000-man SWAT team that we had to develop in that nation. And I remember sitting in the cafeteria one day. I had just sent out assignments for another program they asked me to run called FDD, Focused District Development. Basically, Afghanistan's landlocked. So they took a compass and put a road around Afghanistan for trade called Ring Road. And they wanted us to go in and basically take out the Taliban and build police departments from the ground up, while I was going to deploy all of my men that worked for me into very hostile areas. And the orders that I had to push down, I knew there could be drastic consequences to that, life impacting. And a lot of people didn't expect that type of a deployment on a police mission that they were doing, and I had a lot of opposition from it. And I remember sitting in the cafeteria, I had let all my men eat, and I was getting what was left. And I remember General Kavanaugh, who was vice president of operations for DynCorp International at the time, he came in there, he looked at me, he said, "It's lonely at the top, isn't it, son?" And that really ingrained in me. He sat down and we had a conversation, and his wisdom was unbelievable. And he let me know, there's a lot of storms you're going to weather in your career, but stay the course. And always have good intentions. If you have good intentions, people will see that, the majority, but you're going to have bad people that aren't going to like the orders that came down, and they're going to do everything in their power to shun the focus off of them to get out of it. So,
Do you have a process you go through or routine to set goals and objectives?
Absolutely.
And in addition to that, do you have something that you do on a daily basis? And if so,
Yeah.
could you tell us?
I have quite a few things. So every single day I wake up, I make my bed.
Okay.
That's number one win.
Then
Then I drink coffee and watch the news.
Okay.
And I want to know current events, what's going on in the world.
Right.
And then I work out.
Okay.
Every single day. I'm actually on day 87 in a row where I haven't missed a day working out. I normally don't go 7 days a week, but I have this thing in my brain. My goal is 100 days in a row.
There, yeah.
And then I'm going to go to 365. It's going to continue forever because I don't want to erase the little
straight
marks.
there? You're going to take a break and start over?
No break. I
You
want to
don't give up the
continue to
first
go.
100,
If I take a break, I got to erase all the
That's
hash
what I was
marks
thinking,
on my mirror in the morning.
On your mirror.
Yeah.
You're going to recognize yourself in the morning.
I do. I have all my goals written on my mirror.
Okay.
And I have personal goals and I have work goals.
Okay.
And every morning when I work out,
Yeah.
my fiance and I work out together every single morning,
Yeah.
5:30 in the morning.
Right.
And it's just a routine that we do. And if I don't do it, I absolutely feel terrible. I believe, God gives you one vessel.
Right.
And that's your body.
Right.
And a healthy mind, body, and soul
Yeah.
are the key to success in
yeah.
whatever you
Yeah.
choose
Yeah.
to be successful in. But a life without goals is like going to the range and shooting just into a hill
Right.
and saying you're the greatest shot on planet Earth, but you don't have a target that you're aiming for,
Right.
and you can't see how accurate you are as a
Right.
shooter.
That's
and that's what
fantastic.
it's like. And
Yeah.
I expect my staff and everybody to set goals, and then we set goals as a department together.
Nice. How would you define, if someone were to ask you, how would you define success? What would you say?
I think that's to the individual. For me personally, I don't try and compare myself to anybody. I kind of want to be my own man, a trailblazer, I like to say. And success for me is probably leaving a legacy that my children are proud of.
Okay.
That's something. And when I get to those pearly gates one day, God's going to say, you did it right, son. And ultimately, that's what it's about. It's this time on earth is very short
Right.
in the blip of eternity, and
Right.
we're trying to get into heaven. And what we do with this little bit of time here, that's why I personally love being in public service.
Right.
I could choose another career. I've been successful in the construction business. I've done other jobs where I could make a ton of money. But for me, I didn't have that self-fulfillment that I seek in life. And I'm a life's experience type of guy. And that's probably
Gotcha.
why I've spent a lot of time overseas, 6 years.
Yeah.
Then I spent 6 years deep undercover and then been all over the place.
Wow. If you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, your less mature self, maybe your more idealistic self.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I would say slow down and enjoy the small wins along the way. I'm never happy with the small wins because I only see the great goal that's far off. And slowing down and appreciating, these small wins and enjoying them with the people that helped you get there. I think is crucial. A happy work-life balance is not something I'm the best at, and I acknowledge that. And I've asked people on my staff, like my command staff, my executive command staff, to hold me accountable to that. Tell me, go home. I always prided myself in outworking everybody, and that was something that I felt like I never asked anybody to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And by no means am I even close to being perfect as a leader, but I self-reflect quite a bit. And I try and learn from every single failure and every single experience that I go through.
What was it like when you were working internationally, particularly in Afghanistan?
Yeah. Afghanistan was, I didn't quite understand the culture, that much going into it.
Right.
I quickly learned that the small things, do add up. For example, we had built a base. And we put new toilets in and everything, showers, running water. Well, we recruited police officers after we went in with the military and basically annihilated the Taliban and then recruited what was left to
Right.
become police officers.
Yeah.
Well, we brought them in and these people had never seen a shower, never had running water, never seen a toilet. The first week in our brand new bathrooms in police academy, all the toilets clogged up and the plumbers came in and we were like, what's going on? They were compacted the pipes with river rocks and they didn't know how to use a toilet. So we had to change the curriculum to a whole week of personal hygiene because they were standing up on the toilets and didn't know how to sit down on a toilet, just the basic stuff. And then I'm supposed to take this population that 10% can read and write and create a special forces unit. So it was rather difficult at times, but we found some great successes. And I felt comfortable towards the end there. I was injured over there and came back and had some surgeries. And it's really sad what happened in Afghanistan. I call it a retreat, not a withdrawal. What happened there, we pretty much annihilated the Taliban. Our U.S. military forces there, and combined with joint securities from other countries. But we just left them $90 billion in weapons. All of a sudden, overnight, the Taliban, when I was there, the Taliban was like a street gang, like the Bloods and the Crips, and Al-Qaeda were the masterminds. Now, all of a sudden, the Taliban is one of the largest, terrorist networks in the world, with an air force and an army, and weaponry that we would have never seen from a terrorist network. And that was created by pulling out too quickly. There's a time and a place to withdraw, but once you have a footprint there, we have Bagram Airfield, Jalalabad Airfield, Kandahar Airfield, all the big airfields, you maintain those. We've never pulled out of Vietnam. We've never pulled out of Korea. We've never pulled out of any war like that. You leave a footprint to ensure the safety of the countries around there, your promise to the Afghans, and your promise to the nation that we will not allow that to become the world network for the Taliban to prosper terrorism. 95% of the entire world got their opium from Afghanistan when the U.S. first went in there. So that was funding Al-Qaeda. So one of the programs that I was also working in was the poppy eradication program. I was a former special agent with DEA. I resigned from them and became a contract with the U.S. Department of State. So they saw my background, and that was one of the programs that I was also assisting and helping out with. And that was just eye-opening in and of itself, trying to find an alternate crop for local farmers that paid the same amount of money. There really wasn't one. And then during the day, they'll cooperate with us, but at nighttime when the Taliban comes around, they cooperate with the Taliban. So we had police officers that were recruited and vetted, and they were police during the day, Taliban at night. Police during the day, Taliban at night. It became a business thing where the Taliban would say, hey, we'll pay you $100 a month, and the U.S. was paying $85 a month. That was how it was worked. I mean, it was quite interesting to see the dynamics, and you had to do everything through tribal elders and different tribes. And that helped me a lot to learn to negotiate, and slow down a little bit. Later on, I went to Liberia, West Africa. I was a senior advisor there to the Inspector General, and they had just survived Ebola, and they had just survived prior to that a civil war that was brutal with cannibalism and all sorts of child soldiers and things like that. And it was a very interesting dynamic. There were 16 tribes that made up that country, and I remember I was playing on the police national soccer team, and they were going to play against different tribes, and I got invited by one of the tribes to play, and I reported it up my chain of command up, to the ambassador and things like that, and they was like, be very cautious, you probably shouldn't play for one tribe because the other 15 will probably hate you. So it was like, okay, this is pretty eye-opening. And so for me, I played with the police national team. We actually went to the national championship there and lost in overtime.
No way.
Yeah, it was quite fun. I'm 40-something years old, and I'm still playing soccer, and I enjoyed it. I learned at a young age soccer was my sport, and I didn't realize how much of an international invitation that would bring me. When I worked in Haiti for 2 years, I was a United States contingent commander to the United Nations on a Department of State contract. When I played soccer, I instantly became popular and like a celebrity amongst the Brazilians and the different groups that were there. So it was like all this time growing up playing soccer really benefited me internationally. And in America, it didn't do a whole lot for me initially other than, getting a scholarship to play soccer in college.
It paid your way through college, right?
Exactly. And I'm not complaining about that at all.
It's still paying dividends, right?
No doubt.
So what position do you play?
So I played up front, and in high school, I probably peaked in high school. I would have to say, unfortunately, I was injured in college. I led the entire state of South Carolina in goals scored.
Oh, wow.
And I had 110 goals I scored in high school, 50 something my senior year.
That seems like a lot when it's one at a time.
It was a lot, no doubt. And so I went off to college, and I got injured pretty early on in my career.
Right.
But that taught me some valuable lessons. I thought I was going to be a professional soccer player.
Right.
And all of a sudden, my grades went from C's to straight A's. And I concentrated on academics, realizing, what's your backup plan? So when I talk to my kids now about their goals, I say, what's your backup plan?
Right.
Because I explain, especially when it's sports goals.
Right.
These young people nowadays, they want to be in the NBA and NFL. They don't realize the probability is pretty slim and none.
Oh, real small.
Yeah. But what is your backup plan? Have something
Right.
there for you that's a fallback where you don't feel like a failure.
Wow. How did fatherhood change you?
I was working deep undercover. I had been undercover for about 3 years straight. The day my son was born, I actually was fighting some guys in the parking lot. My wife was in labor at the time for 26 hours. She was trying to have the baby natural, my son Caleb, and she said, "Can you get me something to eat?" I mean, it was to that point. 26 hours, it's like, I got to eat.
I'm hungry now.
So I said, all right, I'm going to run across to the McDonald's real quick, and I came back, and I see some guys jumping out of a car, cutting the toolboxes off the backs of cars.
Stop.
They had like 8 toolboxes, and my skill set on the side, that's a hobby, is woodwork. And I realized a craftsman without his tools is helpless.
Right.
So if you steal a guy's tools, he can't work and he can't bring home food. So it bothered me. So I sat in the car, I dialed 911. I said, this is Investigator Grounsell with the Granville County Sheriff's Office. I said, I'm an undercover guy. I don't look like a cop. I'm in plain clothes. I had a ponytail, a beard, and I was like, can you send an officer out here? These guys are stealing toolboxes. I'm not going to intervene unless I have to. Sure enough, they spotted me, after some time. And when they did, they took off. Well, I'm in my wife's car. So I follow them, and they went down an area where I knew it was a dead end. They didn't know it was a dead end.
Right.
So when they pulled down and had to slam on brakes, I came in behind them and slid sideways like this. They threw it in reverse and punched it and started coming at me. So I bailed out of the car thinking they're going to total my wife's car at the time. I jumped out and I pull out my .38, and I'm trying to grab the guy through the window where I couldn't get my credentials out. So I didn't have a badge out. I got long hair. I got a pistol in my hand. I'm trying to yank a guy out through the window.
Yeah.
Well, the first cops come over the hill, and thank the good Lord it was one of my old roommates, who was a Greenville City police officer. And he recognized me, and I backed off really quick. And I'm up there. I go back up there as fast as I can, and they're coming in there getting statements from me while my wife's in labor. So that was the birth of my first child, bringing him into that world, kind of a little bit crazy. But it changed me from the perspective of I started to think beyond myself.
Right.
I lived for myself. I truly believed I was going to die before I was 30. I don't know why. I had that belief, so I wanted to go out in a blaze of glory in a gunfight. That was kind of the weird way I lived, so I lived fearless. And it caused me not to live as fearless. So I often say that if my